Hi everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Camp.
Ready to take the play?
Yeah! I'll kill all you. I hope you die in prison as well.
That the drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
First up, we head to Jackson County, Florida, for the trial of Zachary Wester. Former sheriff's deputy was charged with 67 counts of racketeering, fabricating evidence, false imprisonment, and possession of controlled substances. Wester's accused of planting drugs in a dozen vehicles during random traffic stops.
It appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that?
All of the drivers denied owning the drugs, but yet most were subsequently arrested.
You know, the rounds remain solid.
The arrest caused suspicion internally, and in 2018, Wester was suspended. 3 years later, the case went to trial. He pleaded not guilty to all charges.
This is a case about an abuse of an incredible power, about the abuse of the incredible trust that we all put, and we have to put, in law enforcement, in a society.
The prosecution relied on the defendant's own body cam footage to help argue their case. Stephen Van, a convicted felon, had recently gotten out of jail when Wester supposedly found methamphetamine in his car.
Have you ever seen this before? No, what is that? I'm just trying to figure out how that stuff got in your car. You can go to jail today for possession of methamphetamine, okay? Oh, man. Seriously, dude. Anything. What you want me to do, man?
Like the other drivers who testified, Van gave the officer permission to search his car because he claims he had nothing to hide.
And I knew my truck was clean. I knew it was.
While the jury got to watch most of the traffic stops, some recordings had mysteriously disappeared.
Why in the world would that have been deleted? I wish I knew that answer.
Ironically, body cam footage would become the strongest element in the prosecution's case, especially when it came to Teresa Odom.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
At first, the officer's polite, even playful.
Anything that vehicle need to be concerned about? Bombs, hand grenades, rocket launchers? Okay.
While Odom stands behind the vehicle, Wester begins his search. There's a small item in his left hand. Prosecutors argued that Wester is palming a small bag of meth, which he claims to find next to a spoon in the vehicle.
Miss Odom.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine. No, sir.
Now, the white small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video, had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
As far as motive, the prosecution claims the 28-year-old officer was ambitious and wanted to move to narcotics as quickly as possible. Wester testified he never planted any drugs.
The drugs were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
And after 5 days and several witnesses, the jury was asked to render a verdict. If Wester's found guilty on all charges, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. After 7 hours, the jury returns with its verdict.
State of Florida versus Zachary Tyler Wester. We, the jury, find as follows as to the counts charged and the information. Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged.
The clerk went on to read the verdict on all 67 charges.
Count 7, guilty of official misconduct as charged.
In total, the crooked officer was found guilty on 19 charges.
Count 9, guilty of official misconduct as charged. Count 10, guilty of official misconduct as charged.
Including misconduct in the arrests of Van and Teresa Odom. 11 of the 12 drivers filed civil lawsuits against Wester. In July 2021, he was sentenced to 12 and a half years in a state prison. Next, we head to Butler County, Ohio, for the trial of Daniel French. He's charged with aggravated murder, burglary, and robbery in the brutal death of 87-year-old Barbara Howe. French allegedly posed as a maintenance worker, a job he once held at the retirement community, to get inside the victim's home. The plan was a simple robbery, but that plan went horribly wrong, and after French's own brother notified police, French confessed to the crime.
What was your intention going in that house that night? Just get money. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to hit her, and I didn't want to harm her, but I figured stuff up. It didn't work. Then I freaked. She said, "What are you doing?" And I just took out, "What did I do?" And I grabbed her and put her down, and I was trying to choke her out. Didn't mean to kill her, you know. I removed the crawlspace hatch. I tried to lower her, but she fell. Before I did that, slowly.
To avoid the possibility of the death penalty, French agreed to plead guilty. The state said no deal, and the case went to trial. The defense argued the murder was accidental, but the prosecution claimed that French knew exactly what he was doing.
This defendant had no intention of harming her or killing her. His opportunity at that moment was to do what? Scoot right out the door.
In addition to DNA evidence, the prosecution relied on French's own words from an interview with police.
I don't really want death. I deserved it. You think you deserve death because of what you did there? Yes. Well, why do you feel that way? A life for a life. I see remorse. You don't know how much more remorse I got. It's been eating that Chad. Have you ever seen a ghost? I've seen Miss Howe's ghost. But I apologized.
The defense didn't call a single witness, and it took the jury only an hour and 20 minutes to reach its verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated murder.
Before French was sentenced, the victim's family delivered impact statements, none more powerful than Howe's daughter, Donna.
I wanted everybody to hear what you did. I wanted to make sure they knew what a deviant monster you are. You beat her. You stripped her of her dignity. You stuffed her naked body in a crawl space. And you almost took her head off. She loved living. And you robbed her and us of many years. I will never forgive you, and you better rot in hell.
As per the jury's recommendation, French was spared the death penalty, but he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Next, we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a video court hearing. The defendant, identified as Vaughn Foote, was charged with drunk driving and is about to be arraigned.
Is it Mr. Foote?
That is, if he and the judge can work out some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me, sir? We cannot hear you.
After some awkward silence and blank stares, Judge Sarah Smolensky offers up some tech support.
I don't know if you can hear us, but you have to unmute yourself. There's a microphone-like device with a red line through it. You have to click on it.
Solid advice. Should do the trick. And then, nothing. We ended with a handwritten note. But when the defendant still doesn't respond, Judge Smolensky tries to open another line of communication. To help sell the request, she even plays charades from the bench.
Give us your phone number. Phone.
Perhaps the swinging of the phone is the judge's way of saying tick-tock as the silence is approaching 6 minutes. Finally, it appears something gets through to the defendant, and he stands up and walks away.
He's trying to do something. Just write it down.
In the background, a good boy makes a quick cameo.
Nice dog.
Eventually, the defendant returns with his phone number written on a piece of paper.
There we go. Let's put it up a little bit.
And Judge Smolensky makes the call.
Hello?
Okay, Mr. Foote. Finally, we can talk.
After connecting by phone, Vaughn Foote pleaded guilty to operating with a blood alcohol level of 0.17 or higher and was sentenced to 2 days in jail with credit for 2 days' time served and 1 year probation.
This is one of the most ghastly crimes I've ever seen.
Ohio for the case of 73-year-old Philip Snyder. 7 months earlier, Snyder said his wife of 53 years died during a road trip the couple were taking to Graceland in Tennessee. But when his story didn't add up, family members contacted police and they paid him a visit.
You guys okay?
I'm okay, yes.
Okay.
My wife passed away.
Snyder claimed that just 4 days earlier, his wife died of a medical emergency near Graceland.
She choked on her phlegm. She'd been choking for quite a year.
Okay.
And she wanted to go down one more time before she died. She thought, I think she knew she was going to die.
The already fishy story became more questionable when Snyder claimed he simply gave his wife's body to paramedics.
Well, so what happened? So where's your wife now? What happened to her?
They took her to a place where they cremate people.
Okay, and you don't know where that is either?
No.
Police became even more suspicious during follow-up interviews when details of Snyder's story changed, and they were unable to find any record of his wife being admitted to a cremation facility in Tennessee. Investigators didn't have enough evidence to charge Snyder with any crime. So, for him, life continued as usual.
You enjoying this weather?
But unknown to Snyder, the person indulging him in conversation today is actually undercover police officer Joan Bauer, who's been sent in to crack the case.
What's your name? I'm Missy. Yeah, nice to meet you.
In the weeks that followed, Bauer befriended Snyder and earned his trust. All the while, their conversations were being recorded.
It's gonna be nice tomorrow. You wanna go for a walk tomorrow?
Over time, Bauer got him to open up about his wife's death and the story he told police.
What I did first was I said the paramedics in Memphis took her because she died on the way to Memphis.
Oh, okay.
Officer Bauer continued pressing Snyder for details, but no one could have imagined what came out of his mouth next.
Can you imagine a hammer this big and this big around?
Like a mallet?
Yeah, 2 pounds.
Okay.
Just scenario.
Right.
Say I bumped her in the head
Right.
and her tongue came out. Just scenario.
Right.
And I put a bag over her head.
The recorded conversation is enough for police to make an arrest later that day, believing Snyder killed his wife in their home before ever leaving for a road trip.
Step up. You're kidding.
Step up.
You're kidding.
Fun and games are over.
Philip Snyder was charged with aggravated murder and gross abuse of a corpse. No motive was established for the killing. Now in court, he's looking to solidify a plea agreement with the state, which calls for him to disclose the whereabouts of his wife's body in exchange for a recommended life sentence with parole eligibility after 20 years.
To the charge of aggravated murder, how do you plead? Is there anything that you would like to say prior to the sentencing?
Put her in the Tennessee River. That's where I put her.
And so you tell me you put your wife in the Tennessee River.
Yes, sir.
Are you willing to take law enforcement to the area where you placed her in the Tennessee River?
If I have to, yes. Yes, sir.
Well, in this particular case, I'm going to make sure that you do it. The family, I've been told, would like some closure. To the charge of aggravated murder, how do you plead?
He's pled guilty to killing his wife, but before he learns his sentence, a member of the victim's family has asked the court if he could give a victim impact statement. That family member is his own son.
If the man sitting before you does not many things of which one was to have honor and respect, I see no honor and certainly no respect in his actions leading up to today.
And finally, Judge Frank Forchon has some harsh words of his own to share.
Now, to me, to accept this agreement between the state and your counsel and you, it saddens me. This is one of the most ghastly crimes I've ever seen. You're going to die in prison. That's the legacy that you left. And the last comment that I want to make to you, sir, is this, and I hope you think about this for the rest of your life. The hottest places in hell are reserved for people like you. As to the aggravated murder, I'm going to sentence you to life imprisonment with parole eligibility after serving 20 years in prison. Legacy, you're going to die in prison.
Following the hearing, Snyder changed his story again, claiming he dumped his wife's body in a dumpster in Kentucky. Her remains have yet to be found. Joining us now is Officer Joan Bauer, who you didn't see there, but you heard her voice. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So have you done undercover work like this before?
Yes. I've been a police officer for 31 years, and I'd say probably 26, 27 of them were undercover.
And how long did it take you to gain his trust?
You know what? It really didn't take too long. It was about 4 weeks total.
Now take us through that moment where he's basically confessing to how he killed his wife.
Honestly, when he first told me, I was sick to my stomach. Like, I honestly thought he has to see this on my face because I think I turned green. I mean, it really was sort of revolting, and I wasn't expecting it the way he told it.
Can you imagine a hammer this big and this big around?
Like a mallet?
Yeah, 2 pounds.
Okay.
Just scenario.
Right.
Say I bonked her in the head.
Right. It's still sort of spine-tingling to me.
It sounds like this confession was almost worse than you expected.
It definitely was worse. It was worse because it came so, like, matter-of-fact when he said, imagine this, you know, and it was almost like he was excited to tell me. Like I said, I've done undercover for a long time, but I've never had someone like that. It was pretty much a shock.
So did I hear correctly that he thought the two of you were going to get married?
Yes, I told him that he had to be truthful. You know, how could I marry somebody who isn't truthful? That I trusted him, and I was okay with his answer. And so that's why he can. And I also agreed to kiss him on the cheek.
So you said you have to be truthful, and then I'll marry you, and that's how it led to him confessing?
He thought that we were going to get married. He actually, it's pretty interesting because he somewhat was thinking, in the state of Ohio, you can't keep me safe. He was worried about me. He was worried about the police questioning me. He was worried about all that. He sort of thought that would keep him safe. So at least that's the way I like to think about it, that was what he was thinking. But there was never any romantic talk of marriage. It was convenience for him. He was all about Bill. He didn't care what he had done. He would have done it again. He made that very clear.
So you agreed to kiss him on the cheek?
Right, I know. I mean, but hey, it was a life. I mean, he said I had to agree. And to tell you the truth, after he confessed and he asked me for the kiss, and I was really sort of sick to my stomach, but at the same time, I didn't know if I had the audio and video. What if I didn't? You know, so I can't say no. You know, what if I have to come back at him later that day that the audio and video failed?
Officer Joan Bauer, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.